Welcome back to the channel. That is a lot of AFG in that thumbnail. And there is a story behind that. Okay, I know it's obnoxious, but my daughter came into my room last night, and she said that there's a boy she's interested in at school, but he Googled action figure grader and he saw one of my stupid thumbnails similar to this. And he's like, your dad's kind of weird. And she was telling me to stop making thumbnails like this. So after she left the room, I decided to make another thumbnail. I said, what about this one? Is this okay? And, obviously she was not happy with me, but that's the story behind this thumbnail and why it's so ridiculous. But I do have some loose graded figures that sold at auction. And I also do have some loose ungraded figures that I wanted to cover, kind of a combination of loose and loose graded. AFA/CIB, they had some really nice variants that were for sale. Wide range of grades, some Lili Ledies, but the AFA 90 Taiwan Boba Fett and the AFA 90 Yak Face sold for some pretty big numbers, big boy numbers. And I think that's something that I've talked about in the past is that, hey, the population report is out there now. We can see how many of them there are in each one of these grades. So maybe that plays a factor. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But to me, I do think it does help prices for loose graded, especially. But I think for mint on cards too, but especially for loose graded, because, loose graded, there's a lot of these that were produced, right? Millions of these were produced. How many AFA 90s or AFA 85 pluses are there really? And I think that now that we know that and can see that by looking it up on the website, it does help a lot. So let's start off with some loose ungraded first. So Gold Star Tech had this vinyl cape Jawa for sale, and they say that it is authentic. Go ahead and grade it, whatever you want to say. Genuine vinyl cape Jawa. And there was a little stain on the cape, if you can see that there. On the left-hand lapel, there was kind of a weird stain on that. The cape looks legit to me. I don't see any concerns there. But it's not perfect, right? And that stain, I think, would be enough to lower this to a 75 at best. Maybe I'm wrong, but 75 plus, somewhere in that ballpark. And it sold for a lot of money. I was surprised by this number, $17.52 for an ungraded one. And we've seen some that are in that kind of condition that were already graded that have, they have sold for more than that, admittedly. But I was a little surprised that even with that fairly pronounced staining or whatever is going on there on the cape, that it still was able to hit $17.50. So that just shows you, man. And, these are not rare, right? How many UKG and AFA graded vinyl cape Jawas have we seen this year? I mean, there has been a ton. So it's not rare, but it is highly sought after. And supply and demand, even when you think you got a decent supply of these things, the demand is such that it still commands a really nice price. But anyway, I was a little surprised that it did get all the way to $17.50. I was thinking like tops $1,200 to $1,500, but my numbers are way off apparently, because $17.50 was a very strong number for what it was. All right, this seller had some interesting items that we're going to focus on. We're going to start off with an Imperial Dignitary. It was a near mint shape. I didn't see any nose rub on this one. If there is one, it's pretty minimal. I don't see anything wrong with this figure. It looks really, really clean. You could make an argument on the back that it's got some rubs or something going on there, but this is probably an 80 plus grade condition, and it sold for $140. But the big thing was no nose rub. That's a huge one. So that's kind of a boring one, okay? But now we're getting into some weird stuff here. I thought this was a particularly cool item, and one of my Patreon supporters did pick this up. So congrats to him, and thank you for using the affiliate link, by the way. He clicked on an old affiliate link. I didn't even send out this in a buy it now alert, but he clicked on an old eBay affiliate link before he bid, and he did win. And he asked me as the auction was going, it was at about 365 was the rate on it. And just to get this out of the way, this is a Spanish PvP Greedo, but it's completely unpainted. And I got to be honest, I've never seen one like this before. It's definitely not stripped. It's just some kind of weird overstock. You can see the scar on the back of the leg, so you know it's the Spanish PBP, because the PBPs typically have those scars where they scarred out the Hong Kong in the mold before, the actual figure mold, before they started producing their own figures. So this is the Spanish PBP, but look, it's got no paint, no eye paint, no hand paint, no knees, nothing. Yeah, elbows. This thing is completely unpainted Greedo. So it's a really cool item. And, it was at $365 with about an hour to go. I don't know how long it was. And he asked me what I thought it would go for. And I was like, dude, I have no idea. Round numbers, I'm going to guess $500. And it sold for $480. And I just think it's a really cool item that if I had to guess what it is, it's probably some sort of overstock. As the factory was going out of business. That's the only thing I can think of. I just have never seen a truly fully unpainted Spanish figure before. You see it a lot for the Lili Ledys, because the Lili Ledy factory went out of business, and a lot of that overstock made it unpainted, unassembled, overstock, non-sonic welded, all that kind of stuff. For the Lili Ledy factory, it's fairly easy to find that because a lot of it made it to the black market, where there were like warehouse finds of those boxes of unassembled, unpainted figures. But for the Spanish figures, that's not the case, at least for those of us in the US. Maybe you guys in Europe can get your hands on this kind of stuff regularly, but it's just very tough to find overstock like this. So again, I don't know if it's overstock or, leftover inventory that was never assembled, but I have to believe it is, just given that it's fully unpainted. So that was a really, really cool item. I would have paid every bit of $500 for that. So I thought that was a really cool pickup. On the other end of the spectrum is this one. Okay. So this is a factory error removable rocket figure. It's not the Lili Ledy. Okay. The Lili Ledy has a scar on the back of the leg, or double scar. This is just a standard Hong Kong figure, but he labeled it as a factory error removable rocket. You can see very clearly that the rocket has damage on it. Okay, so it was a weak weld, or somebody pried it out and, made it look like it's you can even see the damage on the top of the backpack there from where it was tried to pry out. So why this sold for $1,127, I have no idea. If you could look inside the rocket well there and see no damage to it, but even in this photo right here, you can see at the back portion of the rocket pack, that little blue section there where I'm right next to his back, you can see it's kind of a divot in there. And then you can see it on this rocket at the bottom of the rocket. It was very clearly sonically welded in there, and someone pried it out. Why is someone paying $1,127 for this? This is just basically a weak weld or a broken figure. Okay. Don't get duped, man. This is a, I'm not blaming the seller. Okay. I'm not blaming the seller, because the seller has really nice stuff. I've bought from this seller before, always been very happy with him. And, maybe he doesn't know. Maybe he has bought it as part of a collection. I don't know. But this is, a weak weld, or at best, it's a weak weld. At worst, somebody pried it open and pried the rocket out. But to me, given the damage that's even apparent from what I see here, and it's kind of weird. I mean, there's a lot of weird paint apps on this. You can see on the back of the leg there, it's got some weird paint going on. Weird paint on the rocket. You got a little chip off the back of the rocket. So I can't tell you why somebody paid $1,100. Now, there are removable rocket Lili Ledys. Yes, those are legit. There are weak weld rockets for the Spanish tri-logo figure, the light blue tri-logo figure, or the Spanish POC. There are weak weld rockets out there. This is at best a weak weld, but more likely it's probably just a pried out rocket. And it's not worth anywhere near $1,127. I wouldn't even pay $127 for this. If you happen to buy it at this price, I'm sorry, but I think you drastically overpaid for it. That's a crazy thing to buy, and not worth anywhere near that number. So that's a shame. All right, on to the graded figures, and this is the game you risk, man. If you buy these figures ungraded like this, there's a lot of skullduggery out there, or people FOMO thinking they're getting a rocket. This is not a rocket firing prototype. Okay, it's very clearly just a damaged Hong Kong figure. So there is some truth to the idea that you need to stick with graded figures if you're dropping $1,100 on a pried out Hong Kong Boba Fett rocket. So anyway, here is the alternate weapon YPS Stormtrooper. These were packed in with a German magazine called YPS. I can't remember what issue it was. I think it was 501 or 510, something like that. But basically, the magazine came in a baggie, and inside the baggie was this Spanish PvP Hoth Stormtrooper. And instead of the typical weapon that we're going to show you in the next item, it came with this G.I. Joe style weapon. It almost looks like a bullpup AK. So it's a very cool variant that people pay a lot of money for. Now, this one was graded AFA 70, I believe. AFA 70. And you can see that it's got some yellowing to the torso. That's very common. And I would argue that even high-grade examples of the YPS Stormtrooper are going to yellow anyway. I have an AFA 85. It's already yellowed. It's not an 85 anymore. It's maybe a 75 now. So it's something about that Spanish plastic on these particular YPS Stormtroopers, Hoth Stormtroopers, that yellow. The bodies and the heads yellow. So, is it... do you want to overpay for an 85 that's bright white? Well, just be aware that it's going to yellow eventually, most likely, as mine did. So this one it was an AFA 70, so not super high grade, but it did sell for $247.50, so pretty decent number. And that's about what they go for ungraded. I mean, you're basically paying for a really nice Spanish Stormtrooper with the alternate weapon. So very, very cool item there, but that one did sell for $247.50 plus $9 shipping. And this is obviously a standard Hoth Stormtrooper, but this is the hard torso Scar COO. So this is the Spanish figure, okay? Scar COO. They listed it as Kenner Star Wars, but, it's hard torso Scar COO. That to me means it's a Spanish figure. Nowadays, it was probably an old grade. Nowadays, they'd label it Kenner/PBP. Hard torso Scar COO. So it's just a different type of plastic. So this plastic, I guess, maybe holds up a little better than the one that was used for this figure. They could be the same. I don't know. I don't know if that one has the hard torso or not. My gut says it probably does not, given that it's yellow versus this one. But this one was an AFA 85, and it only sold for $225.50. So I was a little surprised by that, just given that it is the Spanish figure, Scar COO. No COO, hard torso. Very nice looking example for $225.50. Unfortunately for this particular figure, there were a lot of really nice figures in this lot that probably commanded the attention, and this one fell under the radar, as did this one. AFA 85, old K-style Jawa, no COO, small hood. We call that one the Palatoy Jawa. Usually it's a small hood, smooth robe. This one looks like the textured robe, small hood, but the Palatoy factory, or the Palatoy Jawa, I assume they were made in the Palatoy factory, they were known for no COO, and they were known for the small hood, usually a smooth robe, but I guess they also did come with textured robes, because this one looks textured to me. That one was an AFA 85, again, old K-style, but it sold for $154.50. And then we had some Lili Ledys. They were not super high grade, but I thought they were nice, worth showing. AFA 80, Emperor Lili Ledy. Obviously, he came with the Chief Chirpa staff for the Lili Ledy version. That one sold for $112.50. Pretty good deal on an AFA 80. The Imperial Commander, AFA 80 Plus, Lili Ledy. That sold for $123.50. Another very fair price. The Rebel Commander, Lili Ledy, Hoth Rebel Commander. He obviously came with the alternate weapon, the bowcaster, instead of his, blaster rifle that the standard Kenner figure came with. This was an AFA 80 plus. It sold for $131.50. So all those prices are fairly reasonable, and obviously they're not the highest of high grade, but pretty decent deals there, I felt like. Switching gears for just a second, I wanted to keep the Lili Ledys together. So here was Gold Star Tech's Lili Ledy Jawa. This is the removable hood Jawa in an AFA 80, new K-style too. And it sold for $1,300, which I actually thought was a pretty good deal. Even on the Facebook groups, they typically sell for $1,200 to $1,400 ungraded complete. So to get one AFA 80, new K-style for $1,300, AFA 80, near mint condition, That's a great deal in my mind. I thought that was worth every penny for that in that auction. And that was an auction, 67 bids, so lots of action on it, but that one went a little bit less than I was expecting. Back to CIB's items, we just have a standard Hong Kong Han Solo Bespin AFA 85 that sold for $148.50. Another very fair price on that. And then we start getting into the Boba Fett. So we had a Hong Kong Boba Fett AFA 85 Plus, old case style. That one sold for $227.50, which I thought was a really good deal, given that, you know, it was an 85 Plus. This is typically about what an AFA 85 goes for, if not, you know, below even what an 85 can go for. Now, it was the older style case, but, you know, I've sent in a lot of high-grade figures to AFA to be recased, and it's not very complicated, and it does not take a long time, and it's not very expensive. So this is a good candidate. I would take this and send it back in to get recased with the new case style. It'll probably stay an AFA 85 Plus all day long, too. Next up was the AFA 90 Taiwan Boba Fett, new case style. That one sold for big money, $945. That's a big, big number, way higher than where I expected it to go. And, you know, there have been a few 90s on CIB's auctions over the last year and a half or so, and I don't think we've hit 945 anytime recently. So this is starting to get back to COVID level prices, you know, during the peak market conditions. 945 is a big, big number for Boba Fett. You know, admittedly, it's an AFA 90 and new case style, and the harder to find Taiwan, or more desirable Taiwan. I don't know if it's harder to find, but certainly more desirable for a lot of collectors. But AFA 90, you know, they are typically selling at a multiple to AFA 85s. In this case, it sold for about 3.5 times what an AFA 85 would sell for. So 945 is a massive number, and that speaks a little bit to the health of the market right now, or at least for CIB's auctions. Next up, this was an interesting dichotomy here. We had two different AFA 85 Plus Luke Jedis. One of them was the molded face snap cape Taiwan AFA 85 Plus. That's the molded face too. That's a very desirable variant. That sold for $427. And then we had a blue lightsaber Luke Jedi. This was the Hong Kong, and that one sold for $464.50. So I'm a little surprised, quite honestly, that the molded face snap cape sold for less than what the blue saber. I mean, the blue lightsaber Hong Kong is not that hard to find. I mean, you can find these pretty easily. And I would argue that the molded face is maybe a little tougher variant to find. Now, I didn't look it up on the population report to see what the population is. Maybe there's more AFA 85 pluses for the molded face versus the blue sabers. I don't know. But I was a little surprised for an AFA 85 plus that this one did not go for more than what the blue lightsaber version did. But, you know, the blue lightsaber is pretty desirable. I get that. Next up was a Hong Kong Luke Farm Boy, blonde hair, dark pants. You know, pretty common figure, but very nice example. And that one sold for $550. Pretty healthy price there. Next up was a solid dome R2-D2 Hong Kong. So, you know, again, nothing too crazy here or rare, but AFA 85, that sold for $540 in an auction, 42 bids. So, and that's every bit of an 85. I mean, that's a beautiful example. Sticker looks great, but $540, that's, you know, we're getting back to some more healthy price points than what we've seen over the last maybe 4 months. So I thought that was a big number there. And then finally, this one really takes the cake. I couldn't believe this final sales price. This was an AFA 90, admittedly, for Yak Face, but AFA 90, and it sold for $19.26, or roughly about, let's call it about 2.5 times what an AFA 85 goes for. So that was really shocking. I did not expect that at all. I was thinking in the ballpark of maybe $1,600, and we have seen a couple AFA 90s over the last year or so. Don't remember what they sold for. They were a lot of money. They were in that $1,500 to $1,600 range at least, I imagine. There might have been one at $1,800, but I don't remember seeing one at $19.26. So that is a very solid number for an AFA 90. But, you know, it does speak to the power of those very, very high grade, loose graded figures. I have buddies that are you know, friends and Patreons and whatnot, and they only collect the best of the best, and they are willing to pay big numbers for them. And, you know, you can understand why when you see these prices. You know, they understand that there is a segment of the market that collects the best of the best, the highest of the high graded, for loose graded and for carded figures, obviously. But, you know, just speaking about loose graded, you know, I know a bunch of folks that are in this category that really like to get those AFA 90s and 95s and things like that. And they're just very tough to find. And when they do pop up, you know, a bidding war is not too surprising. So anyway, I just wanted to show some of these recent sales for loose graded as well as loose complete figures. Just some interesting sales here recently on eBay. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you as always for watching. Don't forget to leave me a like, as it does help out with the YouTube algorithm, and I'll be back soon.